It was a calm afternoon outside a crowded downtown coffee shop, the kind of place where people slowed down just enough to breathe between long work hours. Conversations blended with the sound of passing traffic, cups clinked against saucers, and a street musician played a soft tune near the corner. Nothing about the moment suggested conflict. At a small outdoor table sat a quiet older man in a dark jacket, his posture relaxed, his movements unhurried as he stirred his tea. He looked like someone enjoying the day, unnoticed and completely at peace with the world around him. People walked past without giving him a second glance. Across the street, a rookie police officer stepped out of a patrol car for his first solo shift. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his badge gleaming under the sunlight, and his expression carried that unmistakable mix of excitement and authority. He scanned the sidewalk carefully, searching for something, or someone, to correct. His eyes stopped on the older man. From where he stood, it looked like a simple situation. A man sitting where he believed no one should be sitting. A small violation, an easy opportunity to show control in front of a public audience. The officer adjusted his belt and began walking toward the table, each step filled with confidence. The older man looked up briefly as the shadow of the uniform fell across his tea. Neither of them knew that in just a few minutes, a single radio call would change the entire atmosphere of that street. Because the man the rookie was about to confront was not just another civilian, and the chief's phone was about to ring because of him. The rookie officer stopped directly in front of the table, his shadow falling across the older man's cup. Up close, the calmness on the man's face felt almost out of place in the middle of the busy sidewalk. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look guilty. If anything, he looked like someone who had already lived through far more serious situations than this. The officer tapped the edge of the table with his baton. "You can't sit here," he said sharply. "This area needs to stay clear. Move." The older man looked up slowly, meeting the officer's eyes without any challenge in his expression. "There's no restriction sign," he replied in a calm, respectful tone. "But if I'm in the way, I can move." That should have ended it. It was a simple answer. Polite, cooperative. But the rookie wasn't looking for cooperation. He was looking for control. His voice grew louder, making sure the people standing in line behind them could hear. "I didn't ask for an explanation. I gave you an order." A few heads turned. Someone lowered their phone from their ear. The street musician's melody softened as attention shifted toward the tension building near the table. The older man nodded once and began to stand, carefully picking up his tea so it wouldn't spill. "I don't want any trouble, officer." That calm response again only made the rookie more aggressive. "Now I do," he said. "Show me your ID." The man reached into his jacket pocket slowly, deliberately, the way someone does when they understand how quickly a situation can be misunderstood. But before the card even cleared his hand, the rookie slapped it away. It hit the ground and slid across the pavement, a clear sound sharp, embarrassing. A woman in line gasped. Two teenagers nearby immediately raised their phones and started recording. The older man looked down at the ID for a brief moment, then bent to pick it up. No sudden movement. No anger. No argument. Just control. When he stood again, he held the card out respectfully. The rookie didn't take it. Instead, he leaned closer. "You think being quiet makes you smart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Stand up straight when you're being addressed by a police officer." The crowd was fully watching now. People who had been strangers a minute ago were suddenly connected by the same silent thought. This is going too far. The older man straightened his posture slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "I am standing, officer." The tone was still calm, still respectful, still completely unshaken, and that was what made the rookie feel smaller. So he pushed harder. He stepped forward and nudged the man's shoulder with 2 fingers. "Loader," he said. "Answer properly." A man from the coffee line spoke under his breath. "That's unnecessary." But no one stepped in, because uniforms carry power, and power makes people hesitate. The older man lowered his hand with the ID and looked at the officer, not with anger, not with fear, but with the kind of steady gaze that comes from years of discipline. The kind of gaze that silently says, "You still have time to stop." But the rookie mistook it for defiance. "You people think you can sit anywhere, do anything, and ignore the law," he continued. "You need to learn respect." For the first time, a faint murmur moved through the crowd, because something about the way the older man carried himself didn't match the way he was being treated. And somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "Isn't that Steven Seagal?" The rookie didn't hear it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Because in his mind, this was no longer about a chair. This was about winning in front of an audience. And Steven, still calm, still composed, simply said, "I'm not ignoring you, officer. I'm trying to prevent you from making a mistake. That sentence hung in the air heavy, uncomfortable, and for the first time, the rookie's jaw tightened. Because instead of feeling powerful, he felt challenged. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, have you ever stayed calm while someone disrespected you in public? And salute to those who choose patience over ego. The air on the sidewalk had changed. What had started as a routine afternoon now felt tight, like a scene everyone knew was about to go wrong but no one could stop. The rookie officer took a step closer, invading the older man's personal space, his voice louder than before, no longer about law, but about dominance. You're not in a position to warn me, he snapped. You're in a position to listen. Steven didn't move, didn't step back, didn't raise his voice. He simply held the ID in his hand and said, calm and clear, I am listening. That calmness landed like an insult. The rookie turned slightly toward the crowd, gesturing at Steven as if presenting a problem that needed to be fixed. This is what happens when people think they're above the rules, he announced. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Some kept recording. Others looked away, not wanting to be part of it, but unable to leave. The street musician had stopped playing completely now. The silence made every word sharper. You don't sit where you want, the officer continued. You don't talk back, and you don't act like you're equal to authority. Steven's expression didn't change. But there was something different in his eyes now, not anger, not fear, awareness. Like a man watching someone walk toward the edge of a cliff. You're doing this for the wrong reason, Steven said quietly. The rookie laughed. Oh, now you're giving me advice. He reached out and grabbed the older man's cup from the table, looking at it with exaggerated inspection. You think you can relax here like this is your living room, and without breaking eye contact? He dropped the cup onto the ground. It shattered. The sound echoed down the sidewalk. A woman covered her mouth. Someone in the back said, That's too much. But the rookie wasn't finished. No, we're going to do this properly, he said. Hands where I can see them. Steven slowly raised his hands, not because he had to, but because he understood something the officer didn't. Every second was being watched. Every action was being remembered. Every line being crossed was permanent. The rookie stepped behind him and grabbed his arm again, this time harder, turning him slightly toward the patrol car parked at the curb. The movement wasn't an arrest. It was a display, a public show of control, and that was the moment the crowd reacted.
Hey, that's unnecessary,
someone called out.
Leave him alone.
The officer turned his head toward the voices.
Step back. All of you, this is police business.
Steven gently, effortlessly removed the officer's hand from his arm. Not a strike, not a push, just a small movement that broke the grip completely. The rookie froze. Because in that single second he realized something that didn't make sense. He hadn't been able to control the situation, and the man in front of him had done it without force. Their eyes met, and Steven spoke, his voice still calm, still steady, but now carrying weight. This is your last chance to stop. That sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. The rookie felt it. The crowd felt it. Even the people recording lowered their phones slightly. But ego doesn't retreat in public. It doubles down. You're resisting now, the officer said, stepping forward again. You just made this worse for yourself. He reached for his radio with one hand, his eyes still locked on Steven. You want to play games? Let's play. A pause. Then into the radio. Dispatch, I've got a non-compliant individual. Possible detainment. The words were sharp, official, irreversible. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Because everyone could see the truth. The situation had never required this. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't about law. This was about pride. Steven lowered his hand slowly. You still don't understand what you're doing, he said. The rookie smirked. No, he replied. I understand exactly. And in the distance, another patrol unit turned onto the street. Not fast, not with sirens, but coming, and something about the way Steven looked toward it, not worried, not surprised, made the first real doubt creep into the rookie's mind. For the first time since this started, his confidence flickered, because deep down, he began to feel that the control he thought he had was already slipping away. The second patrol unit rolled to a slow stop at the curb, its presence adding weight to a situation that was already hanging by a thread. The rookie noticed it, but instead of calming down, it fueled him. Good, he thought. Now there's an audience. He stepped closer to Steven again, determined to finish what he had started, determined to prove that he was in control. Turn around, he ordered. Steven didn't move, not out of defiance, out of calm. I'm not a threat, he said quietly. You don't need to do this. The rookie's jaw tightened. That's not your decision to make. His hand reached for Steven's wrist again, this time gripping harder, pulling it back as if to force compliance. The movement was rough, unnecessary, and completely public. A wave of sound moved through the crowd. People weren't whispering anymore. They were reacting.
Hey! That's too much. What are you doing?
But the rookie had crossed into the most dangerous place for someone with authority, the need to be right in front of everyone. He pulled Steven a step forward. Resisting an officer now, he announced loudly, "You're making this worse for yourself." Steven lost his balance for half a second, not from weakness, but from the sudden force, and the moment felt heavier than anything that had happened so far. Because it looked like humiliation, and the entire street saw it, the phones, the faces, the silence. Steven steadied himself. Slowly, with complete control, he looked at the officer not with anger, not with embarrassment, but with something far more unsettling. Disappointment. "I asked you to stop," he said. The rookie shook his head, almost laughing from the adrenaline. "No, you tried to act important." Then, in the most irreversible move of the entire encounter, he pushed Steven toward the patrol car. Not an arrest, not procedure, a shove, clear, visible, humiliating. The sound of Steven's hand touching the metal of the car echoed in the quiet, and the world stopped. The street musician didn't move. The people in line forgot their drinks. Even the officers in the second patrol unit hesitated as they stepped out, sensing instantly that something had gone wrong. Steven turned back slowly. His face was still calm, but now there was something else. Not anger, not ego, finality. "This was your last chance," he said softly. The rookie opened his mouth to respond, but his radio exploded with sound. A direct call. Sharp, urgent. "Unit 27 status immediately." The rookie grabbed the radio, annoyed. "Bussy," he replied. "Detaining a non-compliant." The voice that came through next cut him off completely. It wasn't dispatch, it was his chief. And everyone close enough heard the change in his tone instantly. "Officer," the chief's voice said, controlled but heavy, "tell me exactly what you are doing right now." For the first time since the confrontation began. The rookie hesitated. He glanced at Steven, at the crowd, at the other officers who had just arrived and were now watching him, not supporting him but waiting. His confidence cracked. "Handling a situation, sir," he said, trying to sound firm. A pause, the kind that feels longer than time itself. Then the chief spoke again. "Step away from the man you're touching." The words hit harder than a shout. The rookie didn't move, because his mind was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. How could the chief know? Why did his voice sound like that? And why was everyone suddenly looking at him? Not at Steven, but at him. Steven adjusted his jacket calmly and stepped away from the car on his own, removing himself from the officer's grip without resistance. He didn't look at the rookie. He didn't need to. The shift had already happened. The power, the control, the entire direction of the moment. It had all changed with one radio call. The rookie lifted the radio slowly back to his mouth, but before he could speak again, the chief's voice returned. "I'm on my way." The line went dead. And in that silence that followed, for the first time since this began, the rookie understood something was very, very wrong. Because the man he had just shoved in front of an entire street had never raised his voice, had never resisted, had never been afraid, and now the chief himself was coming to the scene. The radio went silent, but the effect of the chief's voice stayed in the air like pressure before a storm. No one spoke. Not the crowd. Not the backup officers. Not even the rookie. A moment ago he had been loud, commanding, certain. Now his hand was still frozen near the radio, as if moving it might make everything worse. He looked at Steven again, really looked this time. The calm posture, the steady breathing, the complete absence of fear. It didn't match the situation. It didn't match any civilian he had ever dealt with. Steven adjusted his sleeve where the officer had grabbed him, then walked back to the table and set the fallen chair upright as if the scene were already over. No anger. No rushing. Just control. That made it heavier. One of the senior officers from the second patrol unit stepped closer to the rookie and asked quietly, "What happened here?" The rookie swallowed. "Non-compliant individual," he said, but the words didn't carry the same confidence anymore. The officer's eyes moved from him to Steven, and recognition flashed instantly. Not surprise. Recognition, respect. That was the moment the rookie felt the first real drop of fear in his chest. The crowd sensed it too. The whispers changed. "That's him."
"I told you." "Why would he do that?"
Phones were still recording, but now they were focused on the rookie, not Steven. For the first time, he wasn't the authority in the scene. He was the center of a mistake. He tried to regain control. "It's under procedure," he said louder, more for himself than for anyone else. He refused to comply. Steven picked up the broken pieces of the cup from the ground and placed them carefully on the table. A small action. But it carried more dignity than everything the rookie had done so far. You still have time to fix this, Steven said calmly, not even looking at him. The words weren't threatening, they were factual. And that was worse. In the distance, the low sound of multiple vehicles approached. Not fast, not with sirens, but deliberate, official. Every officer on the street turned their head toward the sound at the same time. The rookie's stomach tightened. Because he knew that formation, command vehicles. The backup officers instinctively straightened their posture. One of them adjusted his uniform. Another stepped back from the center of the scene. The crowd parted slightly, creating a clear line of sight from the street to the sidewalk. Steven remained exactly where he was, one hand resting lightly on the back of the chair, like a man waiting for a scheduled meeting. The rookie's breathing had changed now. Shallower. Faster, he reached for his radio again. Sir. But there was no answer. The line stayed dead. A black command SUV turned the corner, then another behind it. They didn't rush, they didn't need to. Their presence alone pulled all the remaining control out of the rookie's hands. The first vehicle stopped. The engine shut off, and in that silence, the sound of the door opening felt louder than anything that had happened so far. The rookie took a step back without realizing he had moved, because deep down he understood something his mind was still trying to deny. This situation was never about a chair, never about compliance, never about authority. It was about a moment where character had been tested in public, and he had failed. Steven finally looked at him again, not with victory, not with anger, but with the same calm he had carried from the beginning. And that calm now felt like the most powerful thing on the entire street. Because it meant he had known from the very start how this would end. Before we go to the next part, tell me in the comments, what do you think the rookie is feeling right now? Fear or regret? And if you believe ego destroys careers faster than mistakes, type ego below. The command SUV door opened, and the police chief stepped out before the vehicle had fully settled. His presence alone changed the atmosphere. Conversations stopped. Officers straightened. Even the crowd instinctively moved back to clear a path. He wasn't walking casually. He was moving with purpose, his eyes already scanning the scene, taking in every detail in seconds. The broken cup on the table, the patrol cars, the phones recording, the rookie standing frozen in the middle of it all. And then his gaze landed on Steven. The tension in his face shifted immediately. He removed his cap as he approached, a gesture that every officer on that street understood. Respect. Not for rank, for the man, Mr. Seagal. The chief said, his voice firm but filled with controlled urgency. Are you all right? The entire sidewalk went silent. The rookie's breath caught in his throat. Because in that single sentence, everything he believed about the situation collapsed. This wasn't a random civilian. This wasn't a routine stop. This was someone the chief himself was addressing with open respect in front of everyone. Steven nodded once. I'm fine, chief. No anger, no complaint, no performance. That made it heavier. The chief turned slowly toward the rookie. There was no shouting, no dramatic gestures, just a look, and it carried more weight than any punishment ever could. Officer, he said, calm and controlled, step back. The rookie obeyed instantly, the confidence that had driven him minutes ago completely gone. Explain, the chief continued. The rookie opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Sir, he was sitting in a restricted. There is no restriction here, one of the senior officers said quietly from behind. The chief didn't take his eyes off the rookie. Did he threaten you? No, sir. Did he resist you? The rookie hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. Because everyone had seen it. Every witness. Every officer. The chief exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes when a leader realizes the damage has already been done. My phone rang, he said, his voice low but sharp enough for the rookie to feel every word. Not from inside this department, but from outside it. The meaning was clear. This incident had already traveled beyond the street, beyond the patrol, beyond control. You embarrassed this uniform, the chief continued. In public, over nothing. The rookie's shoulders dropped. His eyes fell to the ground. The reality of the moment finally settling in. Career, reputation, future, all of it shifting because of a few minutes driven by ego. The chief turned back to Steven. I sincerely apologize for what happened here. Steven shook his head slightly. There's no need for this to become bigger than it is, he said. That response surprised even the officer standing nearby. No demand, no anger, no request for punishment. Just calm. The chief looked at him for a moment, and in that look was something deeper than professional respect. Gratitude. Because Steven had given the department a way to recover with dignity. Then Steven stepped closer to the rookie. The younger officer couldn't lift his eyes. Not after everything, not after the public shift in power. You wanted respect? Steven said quietly. The rookie's hands trembled slightly. You don't get that from a badge. He paused. You get it from how you treat people when no one knows who they are. The words landed harder than any disciplinary action, because they were not spoken in anger. They were spoken as truth. Steven stepped back. The chief signaled to two senior officers, who moved toward the rookie to escort him away from the center of the scene. Not aggressively, not for show, but with finality. The crowd slowly began to breathe again, the tension dissolving into a wave of murmurs and quiet conversations. The street musician lifted his bow and began to play once more, the soft melody returning as if the city itself was resetting. Steven picked up his chair and sat down again at the small table. Calm, composed. Exactly where he had been when this started. Like the storm had passed around him, not through him. And in that moment, every person watching understood the real difference between authority and character. One is given, the other is earned. The command vehicles were still parked at the edge of the street, but the tension that had filled the air only minutes ago was gone. People began moving again. Conversation slowly returned. The coffee line reopened. Life continued, but no one who had witnessed the moment was the same. The rookie officer was being led toward a patrol car by two senior officers, his head lowered, his earlier confidence completely erased. Not because he had been yelled at, not because he had been arrested, but because he had been forced to see himself clearly in front of an entire crowd. And that is a consequence far heavier than punishment. The police chief remained standing for a moment, watching the scene settle, then turned back toward Steven. I will make sure this is handled properly, he said with quiet sincerity. Steven gave a small nod. I know you will. No anger, no demand for justice. Because the real lesson had already happened. The chief placed his cap back on, but before leaving he extended his hand. Steven shook it, not as a celebrity, not as a figure of status, but as one professional acknowledging another. Respect, mutual, earned. As the chief walked back to his vehicle, the remaining officers followed, the formation dissolving as quickly as it had arrived. The crowd began to thin, but many people looked back one last time. Not at the patrol cars, not at the flashing lights. At the quiet table. Steven sat down again, adjusting the chair slightly, as if reclaiming the exact moment that had been interrupted. The broken cup was gone. The table was clean. The street musician's melody returned soft and steady, filling the space with something calm and human. A young boy who had been watching the entire scene from beside his mother slowly walked up to Steven. Sir, he said hesitantly, were you scared? Steven looked at him and smiled, not the smile of someone who had won, but the smile of someone who understood. No, he replied gently. Why? The boy asked the question everyone had been thinking. Steven leaned slightly closer and said, because I wasn't trying to prove anything. The boy nodded as if he understood more than his age should have allowed. His mother thanked Steven quietly and led him away, and in that small interaction the entire meaning of the moment became clear. Real strength is not loud. Real authority is not forced. Real respect is not demanded. It is lived. Steven picked up a fresh cup of tea that the shop owner had placed on the table without a word. A silent gesture of appreciation. He took a slow sip, looking out at the street as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Because for him, nothing had. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about status. It was about character being tested in public and staying the same. A few of the people who had recorded earlier now lowered their phones, not interested in posting a viral humiliation anymore. Instead, they had witnessed something rare. Power without ego, authority without aggression. A man who had every reason to destroy someone and chose to teach instead. And somewhere, far from the street, reports were already being written, conversations already happening, decisions already being made. But Steven wasn't thinking about any of that. He simply finished his tea, stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked away through the same crowd that had once ignored him. Only now, they stepped aside, not because of who he was, but because of what they had seen. Respect, given freely, earned completely, and the street returned to normal. But the lesson stayed. If you believe respect should be given to every person, not based on power, comment respectee below. And tell me, was the rookie punished enough, or was the lesson itself the real consequence?